Hello everyone, my name is Sophia and I'm an account director here at Google. I'd like to welcome you to week 6 of the AdSense 10 challenge. This is the first of 3 weeks focused on user experience. Today, we will give you an introduction to user experience by discussing the most important part of the term, users. We'll be drawing on information you learned in week 4. As we work through today's topic, don't forget that the rest of the week is filled with activities designed to reinforce what you learn here today. If you have any questions along the way, we encourage you to ask one another in the Learn with Google for Publishers community and to bring your questions to office hours. We will start by defining user experience. Then, we will go through a few questions that can help you make sense of your users. We will show you different methods to start listening to your users, and last but not least, we will tell you which metrics will help you understand user behavior. So let's get started. What is user experience all about? User experience is a user's interaction with a process, interface, or system. It is their perception of that interaction that dictates whether the user experience is great or poor. In order to better understand user experience, we can break down user experience into 8 parts. Let's start at the top, visual design. Visual design refers to all the graphics, colors, and themes that a user will encounter. If your website has a nice, modern, and clean design, users are more likely to find what they're looking for and therefore are more likely to stay. Think of how you can use visual design to brand your site. For instance, Google's homepage leverages white space and is thus known for a clean, minimalist visual design. But keep in mind, it's not all about visual design. A very pretty website can still have a bad user experience. Apart from visual design, a website has to be easy to use, intuitive, and not make users have to think a lot. It has to be accessible to any type of user, in any environment, and the website has to be forgiving of user errors. Think of how frustrating it can be if a page is too slow to load, or if it doesn't load properly on your mobile device. Functionality stands for the different features you offer on your website. For example, features that allow users to comment, buy, forward, book, print, search something. These features have to fulfill what they promise. Otherwise, they will cause a negative experience for the user. Be aware, however, that there is a trade-off between functionality and usability. Think really hard about what features users really need versus what they think they need. This is especially important on mobile sites where space is pretty limited. Platform stands for the different platforms that you make your content available on, the most popular nowadays being mobile and tablets. Compared to 5 years ago, users access the internet from very different devices and on very different platforms. Find out what platforms most of your users are on and ensure that you provide them a positive user experience even outside of your main desktop website. If you're a business offering a service online, providing a good user experience includes your customer service and support channels. If you have a chat feature that is not providing the right answers, or if you highlight a 24-hour hotline where nobody picks up, that will negatively impact how users perceive your company and website. You don't have to be there for your users 24/7, but you should set the right expectations and provide meaningful help. When you think about how to adapt your website and content to your users' needs, don't neglect the user's context. The presentation of content and features can be totally different if most of your users access your website on the go, on their way to work, walking to the subway, compared to in the evening when they're just lying on their couch. You have to understand the use cases in which users visit your website and what limitations and preferences they come with. Information architecture describes the way you structure information on your website. Think about what content needs to be presented first. What content is needed on which page, which hierarchy you should apply for different pieces of information. A great structure of information will allow users to recognize within milliseconds if they landed on a website where they will find the information they are looking for. You can use visual design to highlight the information architecture of your site. Larger text, bolder colors for titles and headers, or grayed out colors for breadcrumbs. Big buttons for buy now or search functions are all ways in which visual design can accentuate information architecture. We all know the saying, content is king, and that makes content a very important part of user experience. In the end, content is what users come for. You can compare it to food at a restaurant. The presentation of the food, the service, the menu, the restaurant, the decoration, all of it can make eating a great experience. But in the end, if there's not enough food or it does not taste good, the rest does not really matter either. So make sure you offer the whole package and you have great chefs. Now, let's have a look at a few questions that you should ask yourself when you start working on providing an excellent experience to your users. You should be able to answer all these questions for your site. If there's one you cannot answer yet, then start working on finding these answers. We'll look at 4 sets of different questions. The first set will help you understand the who. Who are your users? Is there a particular demographic that stands out? Can you further segment them? Do they have different goals? And do you have different goals for those different users? For instance, do you have a different layout for your logged in versus your non-logged in users? You also want to understand where your users are coming from. Are they coming to your site through search engines? Are they searching for your site directly? Or maybe they're coming through social or email campaigns. The next set of questions is about the why. Why do my users come to my site, and what is the value that we provide them? Do we give our users what they want, and how are we differentiating ourselves from our competition? And last but not least, you should know all about what your goals are as a business, and do they align with the user's goals? For instance, if you want to offer reviews for makeup products, but users come to your site to buy makeup, then you might want to consider a business model shift. Perhaps you can add affiliate links so that your users can purchase items they read about. Now let's explore some ways you can listen to your users. The best way to listen to your users is to continuously gather feedback. In the following section, we will talk about the most common ways to start listening to your users. Some of these you might already know about or you might already be doing, but you want to ensure that you're using these different channels in the right way and that they actually help you get to know your users better. Online surveys are probably one of the easiest ways to gather feedback from your users. They're easy to set up and you will receive direct feedback to your questions. Focus groups are probably the most work and time-intensive way to get feedback from your users, and you might want to get help from a market researcher specialized in running focus groups to get everything right. They will invite your users or your target group into a room and animate discussions to get insights into what they think about your website or your service. Social media is another way that you can collect and gather feedback. Today, almost everyone uses social media. But do you use it only to distribute content on other platforms, or do you actually use it to get feedback from your users? If you launch the new feature or service and you want immediate feedback, just ask your users what they think. Just use your social media channels and post questions. Another underestimated resource for feedback from users is customer support. This is where users go first if they have a negative experience with your website. So you should listen to these complaints, evaluate them, and use them to improve your website step by step. A/B testing is a very simple way to find out what works best on your website without directly asking users, but just by observing their behavior. We will be hosting a hangout on A/B testing in 2 weeks that will give you all the details about A/B testing and how to set up a test. And then, of course, web analytics. If you watched our hangouts last week and the week before, you learned how you can use Google Analytics to find out more about how your users use your website. We will repeat a few metrics in the next chapter for those of you who could not attend the analytics section. There is a very simple way to start understanding your users, and like I said, that is web analytics. You might already be using this, but if you watched our hangouts last week and the week before, you already learned about the most important reports in Google Analytics. We will now show you a few metrics that are easy to access in Analytics and that will give you a great understanding about your users and how exactly they're using your website. First of all, you should know your traffic sources and understand where most of your users come from. Find out if users from different traffic sources behave differently and which traffic source is the most valuable one for you. Then you can start working on acquiring more traffic from that source. Always keep in mind, though, that it is better to not be solely dependent on one source of traffic. Diversifying your traffic sources will also help you acquire new users. Use Google Analytics to identify your traffic sources. Don't forget to check out weeks 4 and 5 of the AdSense Challenge to learn more. Your top keywords will show you what topics drive organic search traffic to your site. What are your users interested in? What are they searching for on Google before they land on your site? Then ask yourself, do I offer them what they're looking for? Find out on what pages or page types most of your traffic lands and focus all your efforts on them. These are the entrance doors to your website, and you only have milliseconds to convince new users that they should stay. Redesigning your top landing pages can help increase page views and decrease exits from your site. Bounce rate describes the percentage of users that leave directly from the first page they entered without visiting any other pages. A high bounce rate can mean that users didn't find what they were looking for. To improve bounce rate, you want to work on structure, layout, or quality of content. Now, for websites with an affiliate model, a high bounce rate can be positive. It means you're bringing in revenue through your affiliate links, so it really depends on your goal as a website. If you're a content website, most likely your goal is to have a low bounce rate and keep users on your website as long as possible as they discover more of the content you have to offer. You can learn more about identifying traffic sources with Google Analytics by watching weeks 4 and 5 of the AdSense Challenge. In next week's class, we'll actually go into more detail about some principles of user experience, and you will learn what to do to increase your users' engagement. Now, you should know the typical path of a user through your website. Where do they enter? Where do they go from there? And where do they exit? This will give you a big picture. It will help you identify weak spots and allow you to work on them. Another way to understand how users flow through your website is through your one-to-one user interviews. Just sit back and watch how a user moves and navigates through the site. Now, to see this in Google Analytics, you should navigate to Audience and the Visitor Report and select Medium as your primary metric, and you'll get this holistic view. Now, user engagement is a very important metric. It is a good indicator to find out if your site works. If users come and leave again right away, they probably didn't discover all the things you have to offer. If they look at many different pages and click on many different elements, chances are high they like what they see. You can measure engagement by looking at how many pages users look at each time they visit your website and by checking the average visit duration. The next thing I'd like to talk about is user loyalty. You want to find out how loyal your users are and how often they come back to you. You can increase loyalty by providing the best possible experience. You want users to fall in love with your website and always remember you. Stay in touch with them through different channels such as newsletters or social media to make sure they come back again. Demographic data about your users is also very valuable. Find out where the majority of your users come from and if they're interested in different things or use your website differently than you intended. Make sure your content or service answers the needs of your biggest user groups. For example, if you see that a lot of traffic comes from another country, you might consider translating your website into another language. Or if your demographic is predominantly female, you might want to change the visual elements of the site to appeal to that particular demographic. Find out what percentage of your traffic comes from mobile. Desktop sites are very difficult to use from a mobile device and negatively impact your user's experience. If you have more than 10 to 15% of mobile traffic, you might want to start working on a mobile or responsive version of your site. You can learn more about mobile in our Hangout in 2 weeks. So that's it for this week's class. I hope this was helpful. In tomorrow's Hangout on Air, we are going to look at today's topic in more detail by meeting a few members of the AdSense community, hearing about their experience, and getting some of their thoughts and best practices for understanding users. And if you have any questions on this week's topic, don't miss office hours on Friday from 11 to 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time, where a member of the AdSense team will be there to help. Next week, we'll talk about how to better engage your users. Thanks again, and good luck putting today's lessons into practice. Thank you.